welcome back to another Kirby on Sports podcast exclusive interview on the Kirby on Sports podcast YouTube page. These interviews could not happen without our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives in Chief Graphics. We are honored and pleased to be joined by a sports reporter from WDVM based in Hagerstown, Maryland. I mean, we have pretty much everybody from WDVM on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Friends of the show, technically. I'm glad to bring on Grace Grill with us today. Grace, I know it's been very hectic, very busy with all these DC teams you're covering the Caps, who unfortunately got eliminated, and the Wizards, and anybody else you can think of. You see her everywhere on WDVM. We appreciate you giving some time to us. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure. You can find her on Twitter at Grace H Grill. So, how is everything? I know COVID is almost over. I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So how are you doing? I know the job has been pretty hectic with COVID. How has things changed for you? I pretty much ask everybody this, but how are things changed for you, and how have you adapted during this uncertain time?
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest difference was just having everything go digitally. I think when everything first shut down, I think there was this like 2 to 3 week period where it was just like, let's try this, see if it works. And everybody was kind of just bouncing ideas off. And then once Zoom took off, I think there kind of was a standard of like, okay, teams started using that, everybody got on Zoom, and then that's just how we did things. It was basically the same thing. We just weren't physically in person. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing.
So when's the last time you interviewed somebody in person?
Recently, I actually just did a story on, there was these 2 little girls, oh my gosh, they were the cutest things in the world. They are at a local gymnastics place in Boonesboro, Maryland, and they competed for USA Gymnastics. They're like, it was a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they had both won states. The one girl won like states and won the whole thing, and then the other one won states in her age group. And I went to go out and do a story on them, and I was emailing back and forth, and I said, are you comfortable in person? They're like, oh yeah, come on out. So I got to interview them and their moms in person, and it was awesome.
Well, yeah, because the reason why I asked that, is because other people I have asked, they can't remember the last time they interviewed somebody in person due to this pandemic. So
yeah, we've been doing that for a while now. It's not all the time, but most at the high school level, if we go out and do something, it's pretty much been in person, and it's been pretty as back to normal as it could be, I think, for the past month or so now.
I really think WDVM is unique because it's you all get a little bit of everything. You have live coverage from Capital One Arena when the Caps were in the playoffs, the Wizards too, and then you're also covering high school teams in your local area as well. I mean, the question I'm trying to ask here is, how do you feel WDVM stands out to other news stations in the area in terms of coverage?
Well, I think you said it. I think we have more of, I mean, are you comparing us to like a DC station?
No, more like, I don't know, like DC, anyone in the area, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I've even had viewers reach out to me and say that they like WDVM for the content because it is more local news than, say, a DC station. You're kind of getting the in-between because we have that like half-hour Nova News where it just focuses on that. And then we have our in-town Washington, Frederick County, and even we're in Montgomery County now more. But sports-wise, yeah, I think we just have a heavier focus on high school and other local sports. Like when I first got here, we had the Suns. They're no longer there, unfortunately, and the Frederick Keys. So that's kind of between the high school and the local colleges, that's our main focus.
That's great to hear. So, I did some research on you, Grace, and
Oh
I
no.
found so I see you spent 6 years living out of country, and you sort of took up some sports. Um, First and foremost, tell us where you ended up locating to for those 6 years, and I see here you were playing a sport called Gaelic football. I'm very interested to hear what that was like.
Yeah, so my family moved overseas. We were over there for 6 years or so, I guess. We were in the Netherlands for 3 years, or Holland, as most people know by. And then we were in Ireland for another 3 years. My dad's job took us overseas. So spent a good chunk of my childhood growing up over there, and I loved it. And yes, Gaelic football is a national sport to Ireland, and it's exactly as it was. It's Irish football, and it's, if you have a chance to look it up, I really could not explain to you what it is. So Google search, YouTube search, Gaelic football, and I'll tell you, it's kind of like a mix of basketball, volleyball, and maybe soccer. I'll say that it's wild. And I don't think when I played, I was like 10, and I don't think I even fully understood. It was like, this is what I need you to do. Go do it. And I was like, okay.
Do you think sports were real competitive over there as compared to in the States? I mean, I know soccer is big over there, but like other sports, did you notice?
I can't speak to how it's evolved now, but youth sports over there was just way less organized than in America. I mean, over here we have, little girls and boys are playing soccer here since they can walk. It seems like, I think that it's still CASA that they play. I think that was what I was involved in. But then you have AAU basketball. I mean, you just have travel, everything now, where over there it wasn't like that. So Gaelic football, oh gosh, I can't even remember. I think I played for my school team. Like, we played other schools, but like their district, you have to remember, like the state, like the country of Ireland is like Pennsylvania. Like it's not that big. So like, and it's not as it wasn't as developed either. And that's like the best way I can put it. So like, you know how we have districts and you have regions, and then you have region tournaments. It wasn't really like that. They had club teams, but then like the clubs were county by county, and it was like one or two teams per county, if I'm remembering this correctly. Some of my friends from overseas are going to be like, what are you talking about? We have all this, but like that's how I remember it.
So 6 years overseas playing multiple sports and ending up coming back originally from Pennsylvania. So we were talking off air about this, but I want to hear the story about how you got into broadcast a women's basketball game, because this is very great to hear.
Yeah, so you had asked me how I got into this and when I knew I wanted to do it. And the answer is there was never something I thought about. So basically, I had a friend that worked at the college radio station. I think he had a sports show, and he needed to grab something from up in the college station, which was above one of the dining halls, and we were going to get something to eat. And so I was like, oh, I'll come up with you. So it was around March Madness time. I played basketball when I moved back from Europe, and I played throughout middle school and high school here, and went up to the college radio station, and somebody started talking about March Madness or one of the matchups that was going on that night. And I started arguing with them. I was like, I disagree. Like, I'm taking Duke, or I'm taking UNC, whatever it was. And the communications professor that ran the college radio station kind of popped his head out and was like, who is this person arguing with them about sports? And all he said to me was, do you want to call a basketball game? And I looked at this guy like he was crazy. I was like, no, like, no, what? No, I was a marketing major at the time. And he was like, no, I think you'll be really good at it. And I was like, I don't know. But my parents always said, when you go to college, do something that is outside of your comfort zone and challenge yourself. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, sure, I'll call it. So I was color commentary and maybe did a little bit of play by play, but I was mainly color. And it was for a women's game because none of the guys, it was all guys that were calling the games. And none of them, of course, wanted to touch the women's game. So I got all the women's games and it was fun. It was, I wasn't a big like partier or anything like that. So it gave me something to do outside of that. And it was a lot of fun. And then I started doing it more and getting better at it. And one of the professors kind of said, hey, like gave me a little nudge, like, have you ever thought of making a career out of this? And I honestly told him, I was like, never in my life. Never in my life. And I didn't even know how to go about it. I knew absolutely nothing. Like I said, I started as a marketing major. And by that time I was actually like pre-law, like nowhere near each other in terms of career choice. But I was, by the grace of God, I was surrounded by great people who kind of put me in the right place and steered me on the right path. And here I am at WDVM in Hagerstown, Maryland.
So where'd you get your start?
My start. So I didn't, by the time I figured this out of like, hey, maybe I do want to do this because I enjoyed it. I think it was second semester junior year. And they were like, well, and I went to York College of PA. So it's a liberal arts school and you take a bunch of required classes per each area of education. And I wouldn't have enough classes to transfer over into communications that would I could fill in here and there. Like I would have had to sit school like an extra year and I was like, that's not happening. So I was like, no. So I actually changed to PR because those courses could carry over and fill in areas of education. And then because I knew professors, they overrided some prerequisites to get me into some hey, here's video editing 101, just to have a basic, I didn't know how to do any of this. I never held a camera before like that. I didn't know how to edit video. I did not know what Premiere was. I was like, what are we talking about? It was just a whole new world. And so they got me into my basic, video editing 101 and reporting 101. And just to get that. I remember it's a senior reporting class and I did it as a junior, or maybe I was a junior. I think second semester junior year, I got to I figured this out and it was only for seniors, but here I was as a junior who wasn't a communications thing. And I knew I felt so uncomfortable in that class because you knew everybody in that class hated you. Why is she in this class? She doesn't belong here and all this stuff. But it was great. I got my basic knowledge of stuff. And then, but because I wasn't a communications major, I didn't get the TV broadcasting courses and the things that to put a reel together. So I didn't have a reel when I graduated. And I was very, very green. I was not good on camera. I needed reps, essentially. I did an internship at ABC 27 in Harrisburg. And the sports director there, I don't know if you have heard of him, Greg Mace, he's kind of legendary in Harrisburg. And he took me under his wing and I did Friday Night Football with him and just kind of learned the ropes of everything. And his son, Kyle, had a blog on the Hershey Bears called Chocolate Hockey. And I needed reps and he wanted to put in a video element to it on Twitter. And he asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, I mean, I need reps. He needed somebody that he didn't have to pay to do this. So it was kind of a win-win. And that's how I got my reps, was covering the Hershey Bears.
Chocolate Hockey. I
hockey.
really like.
I'm pretty sure he still runs it. I'm not positive though.
Wow. Well, it's very cool. Caps affiliate in Hershey, PA. Chocolate Hockey. So fast forward to now, you're at WDVM doing what you do best, doing great things for high school and the pro level. So give the viewers of this show sort of a behind the scenes, the day in the life of Grace Grill at WDVM.
I don't think there's a standard every day. It's something new every day. Like if we have high school games to get to that night, especially during football season's crazy because everybody's running around. And before we had Alex come on and Jake Rom and everybody, it was just me and Ali for a while because the sports director that hired me left. So we went through an entire football season, just the two of us, trying to get out to all these football games every night. It was crazy. So I don't really have a set day. I mean, like days like today, it was a little easier where, not a whole lot going on and throw a couple of VOSOTs together and that's kind of your day. And then other days it's like jam packed where it's like, okay, I have a story to go shoot. I also have to anchor the 6 because a Leaf's out somewhere else and Alex is getting games. So I got to make this shoot quick. And then I got to get back for this, try to put the 10 together and try to eat in between there too. I love to eat. So
yeah, you got to find time to eat in that.
For me.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was sort of broad there, but doing games doing the live shots from Capital One or Nats Park, is it sort of the same situation or are those days completely different too since they're like national games?
Yeah, so usually if one of us goes live from one of them, that's our focus that day. So when I go out to Captain, it's just me. I don't have a photog, I don't have anybody with me. It's just me lugging all this equipment around. And it's an hour and a half for us to get out there too. So I'll normally, get up, go through my morning routine, go to the gym, whatever. And then I'll come in and I'll write my live shot, get together video, sound that I want to use. Because normally if I'm going live in the 6, it's normally a pregame hit. So I'll put all that together, get all my equipment, head out. And usually it's like an hour and a half. Although the one day I just went live last Friday for Nats. And oh my gosh, it took me 2 hours and 15 minutes to get there. I was not a happy camper, to say the least. But normally it takes an hour and a half. So then we get there, get in through security, credentials, everything, go in, get set up, try to make sure everybody's on. I log into or I dial into our system and say, okay, where's my hit time? Just kind of make sure everything's as planned. I'm going on at the same time and do my live hit and then watch the game. And then usually as I'm watching the game, I'm prepping for, okay, where can I get video? If hopefully I'm praying post game comes in time and we can use that. And then we go live. But I mean, when I went live at Caps, but you got to work on the fly too. When I went live for game 2 at Caps, they went into double overtime and we have a 30-minute window. From when the game ends, there's a 30-minute window when I can go live. And so I normally would go live in the 10 at 10:48 and they went into double overtime at 10:18. So I'm well, there goes my hit time because our 30-minute window's gone. So then they're moving me around into the Nova newscast, which we're not normally in at all, but it's hey, we're going to go live and I don't have video yet. I don't have post game yet. So it's just a straight live on me and just tell me what happened at the game. So it's different. And that's broadcasting. You have to work on the fly.
Yeah, that's very interesting insight from you. Once again, we're joined by Grace Grill. You can find her on Twitter at Grace H Grill. Enough of talking about behind the scenes and stuff. There's a lot of sports going on. Like you said, you just recently covered the Washington Capitals, unfortunately getting ousted by the Boston Bruins 4-1. As a whole, what did you think of that series, and what sort of led to the Capitals giving that series up, in your opinion?
That's kind of really hard to put a finger on, and I think it kind of maybe goes back to 2018. This is a team that won its first cup, and then has key pieces in that team still. I mean, they even had Rana up until before this postseason, and they haven't been able to get it done, and let alone get out of the first round of the playoffs since then. So I don't know. I mean, some people argue they should have never got rid of Trotz. They shouldn't have traded Rana. They shouldn't have done all this stuff. I mean, it's woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I don't know. This overall thoughts on this series. I mean, game 1 and 2 are phenomenal. It was high energy, it was high intensity, it was scrappy, they were mad at each other, it was great, it was everything you love about hockey. And then I don't know, that team went to Boston and it's kind of fell apart. I don't know.
So what was your opinion on the goaltending? Because I feel like the goaltending was average. I knew from the very start of this Capital season without Henrik Lundqvist, excuse me, if they were going to make the playoffs, they weren't going to go far because of their goaltending. Because Samsonov, he's never been in the playoffs. I mean, he's been with the Caps 2 years now. Vanacek goes out with an injury in game one. Craig Anderson, a 40-year-old, I mean, he did good, but give me your thoughts on what that goaltending was like. And do you think that played a factor in how the Caps sort of ended up not doing so well?
I think the answer to that is, of course. I mean, every little thing that at that point it becomes a mental game because you have to, like, look, yeah, Vitek and Samsonov are super young, but they're one of the best young goalie tandems in the NHL. Like when we're talking about young goalies, and Samsonov was great before he was put on the COVID list, and Vitek was solid. And if that's your 1-2 and you don't miss all that time and you go into the postseason with that, yeah, your headspace is different because it's a confidence thing. And that's with all sports. Like as soon as you lose one element of confidence, I think the mental challenges you're focused on trying to stay confident. I don't know. Look, I never played hockey. I'm not a goalie coach. I can only observe. Like I'm not Peter Laviolette. Like obviously he's the head coach of the Capitals for a reason. So I hate giving opinions like this, like, oh, I know more than you. But it's like, I don't know, as like a superstition wise, I don't know if I would have put Samsonov in at that start. Like that would have made me nervous. And for him too, like if I'm him, I'm like, oh my gosh, I only had like a couple skates. I haven't really played in a game. And oh, by the way, it's my first playoff game. Like me trying to put myself in his shoes, I'm like, holy crap. You know, like I'd be nervous as all get out. But then you have Craig Anderson, which, you know, a lot of people kind of got on him for it. I'm like, that dude made 44 saves that night. Like he made 44 out of 48 saves. Like that was a really good game for somebody who's 40 years old. And like, yeah, I think, well, obviously that had to be their call, but I think maybe I would have started him just from a experience perspective. That's just a really tough situation. That's just really tough.
Yeah, I feel like in years to come, Laviolette will build the team, and I think the Caps can get farther. And with experience over the in the next couple of seasons, I feel like these goalies can grow. So I'm unlike some fans who are just whining and complaining that the Caps got ousted by the Bruins, but I really do feel like the best is yet to come under the Laviolette regime here in Washington.
Yeah, and they've got one of the, it's one of those unique situations where their farm team is so close. And I mean, I didn't follow the Bears closely this season, but I'm pretty sure they had success this season. So like all of those guys are coming up too, and you had some guys get some looks during the season too and get that experience, which anytime you can do that, it's again, it plays into that confidence. Like, oh, okay, I've been here, I've seen it. Okay, I feel like that's the first thing. Like visualization is so big. You'll hear athletes all the time talk about that, where you just have to visualize. Like, I mean, big games for me in high school, like I get it, it's a high school, it's a different level, but the concept is the same. Like, all right, you're going to districts, you're playing in front of thousands rather than a couple hundred. And it's like, go see the court, go walk the sideline, just go feel it and try to put yourself there. That's a huge element to that, where guys can just kind of get that first little look rather than being thrown into it.
Absolutely. So another thing I wanted to talk with you about, March Madness. There was a successful March Madness, only one COVID case. The VCU Rams ended up not being able to advance, but not just the men's tournament, but the women's tournament. If I'm correct, I believe this was the women's. Two teams you cover, University of Maryland and Mount St. Mary's. and they got matched up together. I believe you were covering that, Grace. What was that like for the two teams you covered to get paired up in a tournament?
Yeah, that was really funny. I didn't actually get to go to San Antonio, unfortunately, but
Oh yeah, covering from abroad,
yeah,
obviously.
so those two teams were supposed to play each other early in the season. And the crazy thing was Mount St. Mary's was like 20 minutes away from campus where they found out that they had a positive within the organization and had to turn around, right? And it's one of those games that, look, like Maryland's was fantastic. Like I think everybody was shocked when they got ousted as early as they did. Because I mean, I honestly thought they had the potential to win the whole thing. They were that good. I mean, when you put up 90, when you average 90 plus points a game or something crazy like that, like pretty good. And those two I know really wanted to play each other, especially from the Mount side. I covered more Mount St. Mary's than going out to Maryland. But to get them in the matchup, like I remember talking to Kendall Bressy, she was their point guard this year, and she was just like, right when it happened, I was on Zoom with them, and she was ecstatic. It was like everyone was like, how about that? Like they were supposed to play each other, and now they got to travel this miles and miles away to get this matchup done. But that was crazy. They didn't show out as I expected to. Mount St. Mary's is a good team. Like, look, they're not Maryland. Everyone knew that, but I did think Mount had an off day. Like I was like, look, it's got to be one of those things where if Mount is on, they'll give them a run for their money. And they just were not on in any aspect of that game.
Yeah, and looking at the men's side, University of Maryland, I feel like they had, unfortunately, did not make it farther than I expected, but still, I feel like they had a solid tournament as well. I know your team, not just you, but your team covered their run as well.
Yeah, at the Mount St. Mary's men as well, you mean? Or Maryland?
No, University of Maryland. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that was me. Yeah, Maryland. Honestly, though, I thought the Maryland men outperformed. Like they were one of those teams that like this was supposed to be their down year. Like nobody thought this team could do anything, and then they put together like a decent run at the end of the regular season, and they end up being successful in the tournament. I was like, nobody can look at that and be upset. Because all season long, all you heard was this isn't the team, and everyone harped on Turgeon. I was like, you kind of just made lemonade with oranges. Like, like that's a really bad analogy, but like he made it happen with what you guys said was nothing.
Lemonade with oranges.
Yeah, don't jot that down. That's a really bad analogy. I mix up analogies and try to make something of
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, out of all these sports, let me just ask you a random one. What is your favorite sport to cover? What is your favorite sport in general?
Oh, gosh, I absolutely love baseball. I never played. I don't have a connection to it that way. But for me, and this goes back, oh my gosh, I'm going to get kind of sentimental about this. But like for me, growing up in Europe, it was always hard for me to find an identity. Like when I moved to Europe, I was always the American girl that lived down the street. I didn't really know what that meant because I left America so young. And then when I moved back to the United States, I was, oh, she's the girl from Europe. And it was like, oh, like you can't win. It's like you didn't feel a connection to anywhere because you were always told, oh, you're an American. No, now you're a European. And my dad played baseball growing up. And that was always a sport that I watched with him and just connected, just loved watching it. And then it was funny. When we would travel to come home overseas, I had a real hard time falling asleep, like, cause we'd get in at a weird hour and the time difference was crazy. And as a little kid, it's scary kind of being up at night. And I'd be up at like 3 a.m. and my grandfather, they live in South Jersey. So they're basically Philly. They're wannabe Philly people. But they're Phillies fans, and my grandpa would always have the radio on. He'd like, and they replay the game, and I don't know who the voice was at the time. Maybe Harry Callis was still there. I forget when he was on, or Tom McCarthy, whoever it was. And it was comforting. Like just hearing baseball, the call of baseball would help me fall asleep. And I just always loved it. And it was something that like was so purely American. It was nothing else. It was so American that it was what I latched on to, kind of like find an American identity. So I love it for that reason. It has nothing to do with I love to play it or anything else or a certain player. It's just the sentimental value that the game holds to me.
So it must be really fun going out covering Nats games and Orioles games.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, the Nats, they're looking decent. I want to get your thoughts on that in a moment, but
aren't they still at the bottom of the
I think they're third place.
Are they now? Wow.
I think so. So, as we're recording on this date, they ended 19-31 2 years ago, and we all know where that took them on this date today. So, but anyways, let me get your thoughts. The Baltimore Orioles, you know, they've been down at the bottom, not looking too hot for many seasons, but something to cheer about was the John Means no-hitter. That in my opinion, that sort of like turned Baltimore baseball electric, like something to finally cheer about, because the last time there was a no-hitter in Baltimore was 35 years ago.
Yeah, that was the combined no, I think. And then I think the last one was even longer than that Jim Palmer threw. That was even longer. It was like 52 years or 50,
my gosh,
something like that. Yeah, that was crazy to watch. I mean, anytime there's a no-hitter, which, like, you know what the crazy thing about this is that we get like chills thinking about like a no-hitter, but I'm like, guys, like all these pitchers, it's like there's been 6 so far this season. It's like, guys, like it's losing its luster. Like you're not supposed to be throwing no hitters like this left and right. But it's been awesome to see. One of my favorite one, I think it might have been the first one of the season. Was Joe Musgrove the first one of the season?
I believe so.
So like
there have been so many this season.
I think he threw the first one, but I remember watching that one because it was the first one in Padres history. And the story was that he is from San Diego. He's with the Pirates. I have family that's Pirates fans too, so that's kind of why I keep up with the Pirates. But the Pirates traded him to San Diego. So one, it was already cool that he was back home playing for the team that he grew up a fan with, and he throws the first one in Padres history. Like you can't, the phrase, "How can you not be romantic about baseball?" That's the epitome of it. It's so cool. But yeah, John Means, I think just lit up Baltimore. I mean, it stinks that he couldn't do it at Camden Yards and that he was away, but so what? Like it was so cool to watch. It was that burst of life and hope. And he's a great story too, because he's a guy that didn't go high in the draft, that nobody really thought much of him, didn't even really think he was going to make it to the big leagues. I mean, I think he had like a 4-point-something ERA at the age of 24 in the minors, which like, that's kind of like, he's like on the verge, like that's probably not going to like work out. And then here he is throwing the first no-hitter in I don't know how many years in Baltimore history. Like those are the guys and the stories that as sports fans, I think makes you just love the game and love the sport.
Absolutely. I checked, the Nats are currently in last place.
Thought so. I was like, what are you watching?
Yeah, no, I had to double check because I
they
feel
beat
like
the Orioles, okay, but as we just mentioned, that's not saying much.
Yes, of course. I mean, I've watched the Nats. I've seen sort of their pitching isn't there. I know you've covered them. I'm not sure. Yeah, how many games have you been to?
Not a lot. I don't get out there nearly as much as I want to. Hopefully this summer we can get out there more. I went to Orioles opening day. That was like April 8th or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had been out to one just for fun. And then Nationals, I went out to cover. Actually, I think I was out there for Nationals opening day. Yeah, I was out there for Nationals opening day. And they had like a media day where you could kind of come see the new enhancements at the park and just what the fan experience is gonna be with the different protocols and everything. So I went out and did a little piece on that, but it was fun. I mean, any day where it's like, hey Grace, we're sending you to the ballpark today, I'm like, yes sir, because that's a good day. That's a good day for me.
So my question, in your mind, what do you think the Nats need to do to turn it around before the end of this season, because their pitching, their bullpen just hasn't looked good, in my opinion. I mean, they have strong bats. Soto, I like Harrison, Josh Bell, Kyle Schwarber. I feel like it's the pitching, but I wanna hear from you what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I honestly, I watch the Orioles more than I watch the Nats, but just from what I've seen, you said it. I mean, that's the pitching, but that's the story with every team too. I mean, that's kind of the story with Baltimore too. I mean, they have John Means, and that's kind of it. But the Nationals, yeah, I mean, to give you an honest opinion, I just haven't been able to like watch them enough to analyze that. But Josh Bell was a big bat that they added, and Trey Turner can do it too. But I think having that pitching, everybody puts an emphasis on that now, especially with how the game is. Like, I feel like there's a more emphasis on pitching now than there has been in my recent memory or me being involved in sports. So, and that's something, you know, I kind of busted on the O's there, but I'll say this. I know some of the guys that are in the player development that are in the system working with these guys at the lower level. And they told me, now this was 2 years ago. This was 2019. So I know they lost a year with the minor leagues, but so we'll give them another year. But I was told in 2019 that they wholeheartedly believe that the Orioles will be competing for a World Series in 4 to 5 years. And I was like, okay, that's a lot.
Ooh.
I know, but if you look at it, you're more DC, but you look at Bowie and you look at Aberdeen, and they're putting together some wins, and I know everyone's excited about Adley Rutschman coming up. I know they can't wait for him, but I'm telling you, I got to see DL Hall pitch in 2019 with the Keys, and he was solid. Like, with where they were, like, he was solid. And I was so mad that we didn't have the Keys, because that's our coverage in Frederick. Like, we had the Suns and the Keys, but the Keys are, up a level. And I was told that we were going to have Adley Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez, that's another one to keep an eye on, and then they lose the affiliation. There goes summer fun at the ballpark. But it should be interesting.
I heard their farm system is really deep with talent. So yeah. I'm not going to be whoever said that.
They have a couple top 30 MLB pipeline prospects, I'm pretty sure. I think they have like 3 or 4 of them on there. I know Adley's one. I think Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall are both on there, and they might have another one.
Joined by Grace Grill. You can find her on Twitter at Grace H Grill. Last but not least, I know you probably don't watch much football, but the team as a whole for WDVM covered that Washington football team playoff game against the Buccaneers. That must have been a lot of fun watching Taylor Heineke go out there and only lose by 8 points to the Bucs. Give me your thoughts on that. What it was like seeing Taylor Heineke out there and Washington only losing by 8 to what is now the Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, well, I think that's why they signed him, right?
Yeah.
He was fun to watch, because it was like he had nothing to lose. He had nothing to lose. And when you play, to me, he played free. Like, the way he was just communicating with the team that I could see from TV. I wasn't physically there for that game, but I was like, you believed in him. You're like, all right, I'll follow that guy into war. Like, it was just like, he believed it, and he had everybody else believe it. And and honestly, like, he's going against Brady. Like, I'm not betting against Brady in the playoffs, and I think he's proved that. I don't think that man has anything else more to prove, but like, come on, that was fun to watch. Here's this kid who's got nothing to lose, and he's leading this team who some people would say didn't really deserve to be there, and they kind of just put this together, and it was by chance, and here they are. That was really fun to watch.
Absolutely. So do you have any predictions for Washington for this season? How do you think they're going to do? And talk to me about their schedule. The last 5 games of the season, all division opponents.
Yeah. I think Ron Rivera is going to have some fun. And you know what? I really like him as a as a coach. With everything that's gone on with that organization, I think he is such a light in the darkness that's recently surrounded that team. Because he's another one of those guys where it's like, and from what I've heard, I'm not out there, I'm not around it enough, that his team plays for him. And when you have that kind of vibe in a room and you play for the coach, that sets a different tone for how you approach a season. But yeah, I think they're in good shape. I mean, I think Chase Young is going to be Chase Young, and they've got some weapons there. And if they keep build into that defense, they took who was the guy they took, the Kentucky guy, right?
Davis.
Yeah, I think a lot. I was reading a lot leading up to the draft, and my family is a big Notre Dame fan, and they were looking at the guy from Notre Dame, and then they didn't go with him, and I was like,
he didn't go because he had a condition, some sort of condition.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how they do. I think, I don't think they're going to be worse. I think if they could do it last year with that team I think they've only built and added to it. So I expect them to be in that same spot. It'll be interesting to see with Dallas and, the Micah Parsons stuff. And I don't know what the Eagles are going to look like this year. So, I think it's going to be interesting.
It really is going to be interesting. But talking sports with Grace Grill, another Kirby on Sports podcast exclusive interview on our YouTube page. Grace, it was great connecting with you and talking sports. I hope we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Always a pleasure. For our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Until the next time you see us, we say so long and peace out.